And we're here chatting about Dead and Beautiful. For those that aren't familiar with the film, what's it about?
Dead and Beautiful is about a group of uh, young rich, second generation rich, foo or die, as they say in China. And they are the sons and daughters of not millionaires, but billionaires and multi-billionaires even. And they usually hang out together in a group, and they challenge each other to every weekend come up with something that they haven't done before, which is difficult because they've done everything. And so they also like to manipulate and challenge each other. And in one weekend, they wake up with fangs, like vampire fangs, and they're set on from that moment on, they're set to find out why this has happened and what this means to their identity and how it changes things. So they start to go into the night and start to find out what is real and what is not real. And well, that's basically the kickoff point for a few very unusual days.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you were born in the in the Netherlands, and you studied film over there, but then you relocated to China. What prompted that move, and how has that influenced your cinematic style?
Well, actually, I wanted to at some point when I remember I was in the first I lived in New York for a couple of years, and my dad was living there, and I lived with him for a couple of years and went to film school there. Then I did this film school in Amsterdam, and I remember while going there, we were always told to go check out the Tiger Award films at the Rotterdam Film Festival, which were quite important for the kind of formation of my idea of what cinema is and what inspires me personally. And there also I already saw a lot of Asian films by Tsai Ming Liang or Hao Shen or Edward Yang, that really that really inspired me. That was part of it. But at some point, I did my first film in Rotterdam, myself being from Amsterdam, but I shot a very small, low budget film, a feature, my first feature, Beat, in Rotterdam. And it was about someone that was basically in the process of having a burnout. So he had like a quarter life crisis, and not a midlife crisis, but a even earlier quarter life crisis. And he also became in kind of an identity crisis. And I think what I wanted to talk about at that point was how society has changed and how traditional values have changed quite rapidly, and how that also puts us in kind of a vacuum of meaning. And around the same time, I was reading a lot about what was happening in China, and about especially how fast the cities were changing. And then I was like, if that's true here in Europe, I mean, how must it feel to grow up in China, where the change is 10 times faster? And then I relocated to China basically to find that out, and to write for about a year, to develop a film and to see if that would work. And I got very inspired there, and it did work out. And I did make a film in those first 3 years in Shanghai called Shanghai Trans. Which was very much about a generation of Chinese growing up in a completely different society than their parents had grown up in. So it was about this generation gap. It was about a gap of values, of norms, of again, of meaning. And it basically examined how the city was basically very layered, and how these different financial layers, like people that were from the lower class, middle class, and even upper class, how they were how all of their lives were being torn apart, mostly socially and also on relationship level, by how quickly everything was changing. People changing their job, people changing where they live. So so social change was for me important and urgent to talk about. And that's one of the first things when I was starting to do films, said I really wanted to capture kind of the zeitgeist, the essence of the time. in a certain place at a certain time. So I chose Shanghai first, and did a few films there. And then I became fascinated by Taiwan quite randomly, because I worked with a composer, a Taiwanese composer, who had done some scores of Chinese and Taiwanese filmmakers that I admire. So I wanted to work with him, and he agreed to work with me. I was very honored, and I went to Taipei and to work with him for a couple of weeks. And then I discovered that Taiwan is yet a whole different world with its own intrigue. And at that time, also, my films started to become more surrealist and more psychological in nature. So I started to focus more in layers in storytelling. What is real? What is not real? How can we know? Usually also regarding technology, social media, all these kinds of things became a bigger and bigger influence on my work. And that's when kind of Taiwan kind of fit into that, because Taiwan is really a lot of things. It's a very modern place, but at the same time also I always experience it as quite a spiritually profound place. It has much more temples and places of worship, and a diversity of religion than the mainland China has, which basically has eradicated all of its religion and spirituality in the communist uprising. And all of that in a kind of Noah ark went to Taiwan. So Taiwan is now this strange place, which is and very traditional and very modern, all in a very small island. So it's just a very diverse and very interesting place. And well, then I started to make more and more films here, and then it took over my life and became my entire life. And now I'm living here.
I mean, obviously, despite the the locational setting and the heritage of the characters, there's a lot of this film that is in the English language. What prompted that decision of having them all conversing Mandarin or something?
Yeah, well, it's something that I also encountered when I was doing research on the film, and when I was really looking into what these groups are usually like. It's quite common for groups that are insanely wealthy like this to consist of very wealthy business elites that are usually from everywhere. Like a city like Dubai is a very good example of being completely international. I mean, there's that also, if in the case of China. First, we considered making the film in China, in Shanghai or in Beijing. So then it would be like a very Chinese topic, a very localized, the Fu or Die, the second generation rich in China. But we couldn't make the film in China finally because of censorship. The censorship grew so much more conservative in the time that it cost to finance this film that everything changed. And then we considered making it in Dubai. And then finally, since I was already very familiar with China and Taiwan, I came up with the idea. Okay, let's do it in Taiwan. But it's not a very specific Taiwanese subject. So then I was like, okay, well, Taiwan is a more international place, especially now that China is closing down. So then let's make it about a very international group of youngsters that are kind of traveling around, and maybe they don't all live there. And so that's the reality of the situation and what was going on geopolitically, also with Trump as president and all that. I was like, this is no longer, or this is not something actually that is really specifically about China. This is such an international phenomenon. So I would like there to be, a Russian involved, an American, and a couple of Chinese, someone from Hong Kong, and it's typical. And yeah, so the choice to also then mix together languages was very much inspired with how these kinds of groups speak. And also in the years that it cost to finance this film, I've luckily also done a few other films because it's been like 10 years. But I also had became befriended with some people that are in such circles. And I hung out with them a couple of times. I went to some parties, and it's kind of what I observed, this kind of mishmash of English and Chinese and sometimes some Russian words, or if you go to Dubai, of course, more Arabic mixed into it, but it is this kind of mix mash of language. So that's what inspired it.
The characters, you know, like you say, they're super rich, you know, multi-billionaires, which means that everything that we see on screen, you know, lifestyle, you know, their costumes, that all has to look, you know, like it fits in with, you know, with that stereotype. You know, I'm guessing the film had quite a, you know, a modest budget. You know, how did you guys cheat it to make it look, you know, more expensive and fit in with their lifestyle?
Yeah, it was a very big challenge. It was a very big challenge also here in Taiwan, because a lot of locations that we really needed, like an airport that looks like, you know, it's new and massive, and a private villa. You know, in China I could easily find these things, but in Taiwan also rich people live much more modestly, and governmental structures like airports, terminals, and all that are older. Obviously there are massive skyscrapers here and such, but like privatized wealth or some kind of state funded grandness and is harder to find. So the way we did it is actually we shot the home of Lulu, the protagonist, in a government building, which is actually now only rented out for events, and we set dressed it as if they were living there. So it's not a real villa. And we really had to find that out with it, because at first we started looking for villas and we didn't, and all the villas we could find, it's like, well, it's still too small. It might be very expensive, but it doesn't really look it. So it's like you shoot a, you know, government or museum kind of thing, you use that as a villa. In terms of the airport didn't look that spectacular. What did look spectacular was in Kaohsiung, the brand new concert hall and opera building. So we shot in the opera building or outside the opera building, and then in post production put in the signs of go to Terminal 1 and, you know, the flight delay board and all that, because it could be an airport. It's not in reality. And yeah, but I mean, there were a lot of concessions that I did have to make, because we also originally in the script there was also a private jet. One of the character of Mason would arrive in a private jet. There was a scene in the private jet, and all of that was finally not possible. There was actually a Lamborghini or Maserati car chase in the beginning, and now it's just one blue car. So I mean, yeah, there were all these kind of, you know, things that, you know, yeah, had to be compromised. But yeah, you know, we you know we and another thing, like this club where they hang out in the beginning. You know, I had in mind that what I had seen a lot in China is that you had these VIP lounges up in the sky, or another floor, and then you look down and you just see like the normal people party. You know, and even there's like VIP tables, but if you're really rich, you're not even in that room. You just go down to, you know, whatever, and then come back up to your. So but we couldn't really find that here. Also, we couldn't really film in clubs here. They were very stuck up about that here. So finally we just we faked it. There was just this restaurant at the edge of the city which looked kind of fancy, and then this shot where we at first looked down on a floor below, you know, that's just totally fake, and we just green screened that.
And I guess, you know, your films with, you know, vampiric characters means, you know, a lot of nighttime on screen. What challenges did that pose in terms of shooting?
Mm. It's quite tough shooting a lot at nighttime, because basically you just jet lag your entire crew, because everyone just starts to, you know, get you after like, and you have some blocks. So you have, you know, because some things are not at night, or some things could be. So it's basically your assistant director coming to you in pre-production, you know, hundreds of times, and being like, could this scene maybe be shot during the daytime, because then we don't have to, you know, and you know, me being like, no, I really want to see a window there, and you know, it's like, no. And so yeah, it's that's difficult, and it made us all very tired. There were several circumstances in the shooting that made this a very, very hard production, very tough. Also in Taiwan it really rains a lot. So when we were shooting the part in the wilderness, also the ritual where they meet the shaman and all that, that whole ritual, it happened completely in the rain. And there were like a few days that we had to shoot like lots of parts of that. And yeah, it was constantly raining, and rain, I would say, in combination with full night shoot is really like a drainer, because when everything is wet, then everything constantly has to be protected from the rain with big umbrellas and all that, and it just slows down everything. And so yeah, all these kinds of things were big challenges.
So you're hoping for some sunnier climes for your next project?
Oh yeah, I'm always I think actually no, because now we're gonna probably shoot in Canada, so it's just gonna be cold. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's not. It's. Sometimes I really think to myself, like, when you think of a subject for a film, you spend so much time dealing with that subject, and you spend so much time on that subject and also in that theme, that very often it kind of seeps over into your life a little bit. Like, I've had that several times. So I'm always like, if I would want to make myself a happier person, why don't I just think of something, that's really nice and happy, like, and I'll probably have a great time as a result also afterwards. uh, but it's just not, I just don't have any happy ideas. Really, I'm quite a sociable guy in real life, but I just don't have good ideas for happy subjects.
I guess it's a catharsis in a way then.
Yeah. That's what my teacher always said at the film academy. Every time when somebody says, "Oh, I can't, I'm going into therapy," then he said, like, "Well, there goes another great film." The other way around. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Dead and Beautiful arrives on Shudder, in the next week or so. It's a platform that's known for its diversity, within genre cinema. Where do you think that this film sort of fits in that? What has this film got to offer that some of the others might not?
I think what is really interesting when you look at genre in the last few years, maybe the last 10 years, you could even say, I think a lot of interesting things have been happening with genre film. I think the boundary, or if there ever was such a thing as a boundary between them, but I think you see more and more influences, or more and more attitude from filmmakers that would first be categorized as typically art house, that are now suddenly also in genre films. If you think about things like, I don't know, Mandy, or The Neon Demon, or so many more. So, and I think also my impression of Shudder is that they are also very much looking to search for, what is horror now, and also what is psychological horror. So yeah, I think it's it would it this would also, what I can also say actually is that this film has been quite successful with genre festivals and genre audiences, much more than I expected. I thought that, before, I thought, well, when I was still shooting the film, I thought, it would be kind of a crossover film. Maybe it would be taken more seriously by a art house festival circuit or audience, and people that are usually have a more affinity with genre or gore, or well, not gore, but because people that are in it for the kicks and the gore are not going to like this film. But I do think that, or at least they're not going to get what they expect or what they're looking for. But it turns out actually that the way this film is about vampirism in a surprising way is actually something that a lot of people that like vampire films that are really surprised by, and that are really pleasantly surprised by. So actually, so far the reception from the genre side of it, if there even is such a thing, but that has been very positive for this film. So I'm quite hopeful that it will find an audience base on Shudder. Yeah.
Well, I will wish you best of luck with the release, and I will thank you again for taking the time out to talk to me.